Ring.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the International Geography Youth Summit 2021 with the theme Geographies of Care in the Time of COVID. Welcome to all of you. Let me start by first acknowledging and saluting our teachers, all of our teachers in whatever form and context they might have been in our lives. My favorite recognition of a teacher is to say that even if a teacher teaches you even just one syllable, there is no wealth in this earth with which we can repay the debt. Ekamevaksharam is the Guru Shishyam Prabodhayet. Prithvivyam nasti tadravyam yaddatva chandrani bhavet. We were taught this in ninth grade. So welcome to all of you. Very quick round of introductions. On our IT team, we have Anirdesh, Ramachandra, Kanishk. These three are part of our IT team. Two others are traveling today, so they're not online. In addition, we have from the organization, from the Institute of Geographical Studies, we have Dr. Muttata, a research associate and a geographer. She's going to be part of the introduction in a few seconds. We also have from Dharani USA, which is our sister organization. We have Dr. Heidi Nast. Some of you already know her from previous IGYS meetings. We'll also be introducing one more person from Dharani USA at the end of the conference. She's going to be joining us to perform certain other roles in the organization that I'll detail. So thanks to everyone for making this possible and for being here today with us. With that said, let me quickly introduce Dr. Muttata Ramanathan, who is the research associate at the Institute of Geographical Studies. She's a PhD in geography from the University of Seattle and has been with TIGS for several years now, I think, at least maybe 10 years now, I think, 8 or 10 years. And she's going to provide us the context for both TIGS and IGYS and set the tone for the conference in terms of what to expect, what to look for. Muttata, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chandra. Hello, everyone, and very warm welcome to all of you from our team at the Institute of Geographical Studies, or TIGS, as we are popularly known. This conference is our flagship program, and since we launched it in 2014, we have had the opportunity to host it every year, except last year, of course. This year, as we're all slowly returning to normalcy and wishing fervently for better and safer times, we decided to host it online. Interacting with young geographers is our lifeblood here at TIGS, and we could not let another year go by without revitalizing this connection. We debated a lot about the online format and the consequences of the digital divide, as our conference is usually attended by youth from a diversity of caste and class backgrounds. So this year we are acutely aware of those who have not been able to participate, and we miss them. For those of you who are new to TIGS, I'd like to share that it was started in 2000 by Dr. Chandrasekhar Balachandran, who returned to India from the US to work in the area of non-formal geography education. And geography is a discipline that is unfortunately taught in an old-fashioned manner in many schools in India. It continues to be taught like that till today. But if one can incorporate many innovations in the field and new research, it is a discipline which has immense potential to equip children with very useful skills for the 21st century. The underlying emphasis of our work here in TIGS is to help children understand fundamental concepts in a manner that relates to their daily lives. So we really pride ourselves in breaking down concepts. And we also bring in an emphasis on people. People are as important as place. People are the actors who make place what it is. And so we focus on people and their relationships to place, and try to inculcate a sense of imagination and observation, and good communication skills too among the children who work with us. So please visit our webpage, tigs.in, to learn more about our activities, such as the blogs, the geography quizzes and puzzles, and also the geography over distance course, which is conducted by Chandrasekhar. I'd like to also note that we are very ably assisted in our work by our sister organization, Dharani USA, which is headed by Professor Heidi Nast, who you will hear after me. Moving on to the conference this year, at TIGS, we believe firmly that children should not just be passive consumers of information and knowledge. And this annual conference that we host is our attempt to assist children to become confident producers of knowledge and to make sense of the world around them. So we would like more and more, we would like people to listen to what children have to say, what they are taught about, what they have thought about. While it was tempting to find conference themes that would distract us from the pandemic, we decided to create a space for young geographers to think aloud and to share what they have been experiencing during a pandemic. Hence, the chosen theme of Geographies of Care. We are very proud of all the young researchers who are presenting here today. All the participants have shown the interest to spell out a concern that they have and turn it into a research question and go and collect data. Many have conducted interviews with those who live around them, and a few students have even taken the trouble to go out of their comfort zone in identifying respondents to interview. And secondly, they have spent a lot of time in the midst of their regular studies to make sense of the data that they have collected. We thank all the mentors for their valuable time in this process. And my request to all our young presenters today is that you view today's conference as a chance for you to further deepen your research idea. Okay, so it doesn't mean that once you have your PPT that your research ends and that's your final result. Since you've had a week or more of rest from your work, I would like to encourage each of you to look at your presentation with fresh eyes today. Ask yourself, what did I do with the data that I collected? How did I choose to share it with others? Did I just describe it, or did I try to understand it? So what is the difference between description and understanding? For instance, let's say you go to the market and you select a variety of fruits. What do you do with all that when you come back home? Do you just arrange all the fruits in a basket and display it for your family on the table? Or can you pick up each fruit and look at the fruits carefully and try to understand something more about each fruit? What might be different about each one and why might they be different? So use today's sessions to push your understanding on difference. Okay, so while many of you have noted that all the people you interviewed are different from each other, we can do more to understand why they are different. And that is the real work of a geographer. Understanding differences and the reasons behind differences is a very important step towards nurturing a better society. So I'd like to leave you with that thought. And I would also like to welcome all the other participants who have registered to support and encourage the work of our young geographers. So we look forward to your participation as well in the Q&A sessions. So thank you so much. I hope you all enjoy the conference. And now I hand it over to Professor Heidi Nast.
Okay, can you guys see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, so let me just see if I can do this easily. How do I do the start? Play from the start. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a few short remarks. First, I'm just so happy that all of you are here. I wanted to give you more information about who I am and where I'm from. So I live in Chicago. I'm at the DePaul University International Studies program, and I am also a professor of geography. I have been privileged over the last many years to be the managing trustee of Deyrani USA, and more currently the executive director. You're going to be hearing from somebody who's going to be taking my place as the managing trustee at the end, a former student of mine, Rachel Dimmitt, and she'll introduce herself in a video at the very end. So although we're kind of, quite divided there geographically, this has been an amazing time for all of us to use Zoom and other kinds of technologies to connect. So I think this is going to actually change how we as an organization even do these, if we want to have people from other regions of India even. Okay. I haven't used this format before. Here we go. So I wanted to give you a sense of what I do. I fundraise in the US and elsewhere to just help defray TIG's overhead costs. I network with geography scholars in the US and internationally to keep them in touch with what's going on with everything that you do. Develop scholarly interests in the US and internationally about what you are accomplishing, and not just the students, but I also often brag about the teachers, especially at Viginali, the mentors, parents, community partners, and even community members. And then I regularly talk with Dr. Balachandran about what he's doing, what I can do to support him, share ideas, and so on. But our main role is really just to do as much fundraising as we can, and expand that as we go on. So I wanted to share a little bit also about our geography in the US in terms of what's going on with COVID. And I wanted to introduce demography, linking it to geography. So in the US and in India, if you guys can think about, because you're all doing presentations, is there a demographic pattern to who lives and who dies? And demography means things like age, sex, caste or class, racial identity, and so on. So I've just listed a few of those. So is there a gender that tends to die more than others, women or men? Are there age groups that tend to die or are dying more often? Are there different castes? Are there certain professions, people who are rural or urban? Does it make a difference if you have access to vaccination, masks, antibacterial supplies? What about your educational level? And are there people who are making it political about vaccinations, for instance, or about the reality of the COVID in order to win votes? So if we say yes to any of those things, if we say yes, there are patterns of gender, age, caste, and so on, then we have to say, okay, if so, what is the geography of that demography? That is, in which parts of a city, your city, Bengaluru, could be Delhi, wherever, village, neighborhood, or in what workplaces are persons the least protected? And where do persons live who do not listen to science? So I thought I would give here, this is a chart of cumulative COVID deaths. And for those of you that may not be familiar, ex-President Trump still has many people who support him. And he tends to be very conservative. His followers tend to be conservative, and they often think about COVID as a hoax, or that the vaccinations are against their rights and privileges. But if we actually then map the number of deaths, that's the red line, you see it's going up. Whereas in the bottom line, where you've got the Democrats, they're trying to vaccinate and so on, wear a mask, you get a very different curve. And if you were then to say, okay, is there a demographic pattern? We could say, okay, political affiliation could be somewhat demographic. And then we'd have to say, what is the geography? Where do most Republicans have their base? And where do most Democrats have their base? So it turns out that there are more COVID cases in cities, which is where Democrats are, but that's because it's more densely populated. So there's all these little complications to how you pick apart and try to map different variables onto space. Here's another way of looking at it. These are Republicans in the red and the Democrats in the blue. You can just map it onto your own political parties, but this is just to give you a sense of how you might look at this. And this is the Congress, so our representatives, and they've colored in the dots to show the proportion of those who are grayed out, though they don't have it. And then the ones that are filled in, the dark blue ones are Democrats and the dark red ones are Republicans. So again, you can see how a particular political affiliation, which is saying that the vaccination is a hoax and it's dangerous, it's actually killing people, right? And in this case, these lawmakers who tested positive, they have the means to get hospital care. Not so with people that are perhaps in rural areas who listen to them, but don't have the same resources. So you can see the stark contrast on the left, where 41% of Republicans say they do not plan to get vaccinated, and 4% of Democrats say they do not plan to get vaccinated. And I know some of you have looked at that in your papers about, people being reticent and not wanting to get vaccinated. And we have to think about the reasons. Is it political affiliation? Is it because they don't have access to healthcare? Is it because it's unaffordable? Is it transportation issues? Is there not a particular clinic in a village area or some other area of the city? So all of those things are the next step after you map, is to ask, why are these patterns there? So while it's been a very tough year for everyone worldwide, as geographers, we see that it has not been equally tough for everyone. There's a demographic to it. There are certain people, certain groups. And so it's not everywhere tough. It's demographically limited. And so as geographers, we have a unique and powerful opportunity to educate those around us by mapping out where the highest rates of death and infection are occurring, and asking why these spaces of infection and death exist and not others. So in this way, we begin to see that caring is much more complicated than what we might have thought. It means asking tough questions and seeking answers. So I just want to end by saying congratulations to everyone. Your abstracts are fabulous. At DRani, we're really impressed with everything that you've been doing, and can't wait to hear and see the work you've been doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Heidi, and Dr. Mutata. Just a brief couple of points on housekeeping details, which is what I generally do at the inauguration of any IGYS. One is that please remember that when you are asking a question of any of the presenters, you must be able to say one thing that you found very interesting or very nice about their presentation before you ask a question or make a comment. This is something we have practiced in all our IGYS meetings, and it would be good to practice it online as well. So that is one request. And I also hope that the presenters are all here. And when it comes to the Q&A time of the session, our IT team will turn on your, will enable you to speak and show yourself as well. And finally, all of these will be recorded, as I've already said, all of these will be recorded and made available on YouTube as soon as we possibly can. Actually, that was not the final point. The final point is that the timings that we have given in the schedule will vary a little bit. We'll go this way or that way. Please bear with us because that's the nature of having things online. We are also I'm certainly very new to this. So there will be a little bit of fluctuation in the time that we face, in the timings that we face. All right. So I'll now ask our coordinator, Anirdesh, to start the first session so we can all watch the presentations in sequence.
I request all participants to keep their videos off during the playing of the videos, please.
Please turn your videos off, all of you. Good.
Happy morning, everyone. Today we are going to speak about how kids going to school were affected by COVID-19. This project was done by Sai Vamshi Bivi, Sai Lohit Kili, and Pavan Verma. We are of grade 9, Vidyanjali Academy for Learning, Bengaluru. We all know that COVID-19 pandemic has an effect worldwide. The schools have been shut down for almost a year and a half. We noticed that there has been many changes in students. To feed our curiosity, we interviewed a few of our classmates to get to know the changes they themselves have experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. Questions we asked. We compared all the questions before COVID and during COVID. How often do you procrastinate in your schoolwork? Describe your daily routine. Has there been any change in your physical health? Has COVID-19 situation affected your ability to focus in any way? The results were as follows. 5 of our friends felt that although they procrastinated during offline classes, the procrastination was extreme during online sessions. There were also 2 of them who could avoid procrastinating and 1 of them who became punctual since their parents too heard about the homeworks given in online classes, which they wouldn't disclose during offline sessions. 3 of our friends told us that before COVID, they used to play a lot. But during COVID, they couldn't play in schools as well as with their friends since it was and is necessary to take COVID precautions. While 5 of our friends could spend time with their families, whereas 6 of them used this opportunity to learn new things like coding, drawing, making animes, etc. There were 2 people who said their weight increased and 4 people whose weight didn't change. And the remaining 2 lost some. There hasn't been any changes in terms of medical health, which is surprising to the matter of fact. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced them to take better care of their health. So due to this reason, there wasn't much change in 6 of our friends in their medical health. But 2 of them who were affected by COVID-19 had an impact on their immunity and medical health. We noticed that during our interview with our friends, due to excessive use of electronics, they weren't able to focus on anything but electronics, which has reduced their focus and ultimately their grades. While listening to online classes, few were distracted by social media, YouTube, games, etc. Now my friend Sai Lohit is going to continue.
As we all know, COVID-19 has been a dark time for us all. But is there anything we can learn from it? Yes, there are 3 lessons which we learned. How well can the way we viewed our house has completely changed. Home is a place where we feel comfortable and we want to be. But during COVID-19 situation, the way we viewed our home has completely changed. This is mainly because of 2 reasons. One is that one cannot stay at home at the same place for a long duration of time as they easily get bored and feel bored. And another reason is the change in social environment of the house. Normally, a house is just a building with room. But what makes a home is the interaction which we make with our family members. During these tense situations, there might be argument between family members, which makes a home an uncomfortable place to stay. Learn the value of Mother Nature. As we all know that during COVID-19 situation, we were stuck at home. Even if we went out for things such as shopping, etc., we used to wear a mask. So we couldn't breathe the refreshing air and couldn't go out to enjoy the scenery. These were the things which we used to take for granted before COVID-19 situation. We have now come to know the value of Mother Nature. Learn how to seek opportunities even during dark times. The COVID-19 situation has been a dark time for us all, but is there any way that we can use this situation to improve our skills and become an overall well-rounded person who's capable of many things? Yes, as we all know, due to lockdown, we are focused to stay at home and have nothing much to do. So we can use this opportunity to learn new things such as coding, drawing, cooking, etc. This situation also helped us how to seek light in situation even when situations seem dark and use the opportunity to your advantage and become a better person. Thank you and have a nice day.
Hello, my name is Siddharth. I'm 13 years old. I'm in 8th grade in Purna Learning Center. My school is the place I love to be most. And due to COVID, I couldn't attend classes for a few months. That got me thinking, why not start a project? When the concept of online classes started, I enjoyed it for a while until I realized how much better physical schooling is. Hence my research question. How have students from different backgrounds, livelihoods, schools dealt with online classes? I started by making a sample questionnaire to my pilot survey, as detailed as possible. When I received responses from my pilot survey, I knew I had scope for improvement. So, while making my final questionnaire, I made most of the questions choice-based questions so that I could acquire the best answers possible. My questionnaire had 29 questions and I had 40 respondents. Here are a few of the factors of my questionnaire. The personal details included age, family income, number of siblings, and rooms at home. Technical factors included their respective device and the kind of internet connection they had. And what mattered the most, their opinions on what can be changed, what challenges are faced, and what resolutions they've had. Majority of my respondents were from these schools located in Bangalore, which is a metropolitan city in the state of Karnataka. These are the various backgrounds I have taken students from: different grades, family monthly income, the type of school they go to, and their family size. Majority of the students were school-going ones, with a few from college. A larger number of students were from private conventional schools. 50% of families were with high household incomes. I have classified that monthly household income above 50,000 is high income and low is below 30,000. Around 50% of my respondents had a family of 4. The larger family size were distributed across low and high income families. This bar chart gives the different challenges faced by students. The biggest problems faced were internet issues, burning of eyes, concentration, and noise and space issues at home. Some had trouble managing their time for online classes and homework. For example, one student told me in Tamil while interviewing, I sit in the shop that my parents own and help my mother sell vegetables during classes. Internet issues and challenges with devices stood out as the biggest problem faced across backgrounds. Though the solutions varied with background, the students from high-income groups went for an increased Wi-Fi speed, additional Wi-Fi connection, or used an extender, while students from low-income background managed with mobile data plans. They even sought for innovative solutions like going outside to find better connection or going to school for better internet. Many had to buy new devices. Middle and low income sought for new smartphones and new data plan. Some of the students from the lower income private schools and government schools had their schools provide them with tablets and smartphones. In my school, an unconventional one, the parental community managed to arrange for a few devices. Noise and space issues were faced by students across backgrounds. Common solutions sought for noise and space were the use of headphones or earphones. In few cases, people created smaller spaces within existing rooms. Few students from low and middle income groups managed by taking classes from open spaces or terraces. Another problem faced was concentration issues. Students would get hooked onto social media platforms and would struggle to pay attention to the classes. Solutions that worked included getting advertisement blockers, trying to finish as much work as possible, using headphones or earphones, and yet there were a few who couldn't find solutions that worked for them. Across backgrounds, students faced burning eyes issues. Some went to the doctor, some didn't. Challenges faced with internet issues were faced by almost all students across backgrounds. However, solutions sought varied and the income group indicated the digital divide. Challenges faced with space and noise issues didn't vary across backgrounds. However, solutions sought varied with family size and income. Challenges faced and solutions sought for the concentration and health issues didn't vary much across backgrounds. Solutions could not be sought for a few problems across backgrounds and affected learning. Limitations of my primary research. I could have gotten more students from certain backgrounds as students from unconventional and government schools formed a smaller number than the rest. I did consider interviewing teachers and parents, but my survey would have gotten very complex as I would have had required a different set of questions for the teachers and another set of questions for the parents. Many were confused on the question on how many rooms they had in their houses. Many mentioned as BHK, while some mentioned as individual rooms. Here are the responses on what students require. Many students didn't want help when asked what they would require to attend online classes. Others said that they would want refurbished or new devices to use. Some wanted help with their homework and had requested that teachers give individuals more attention. Few students wanted a new connection or increasing of data speed. On what attributes from online learning they would retain in offline classes, 50% didn't mention anything. The most common answer was use of video presentations in the physical classes. Some suggested no uniform and breaks between classes. These inputs from students could be taken further by the schools and NGO to help build a better model for schooling. My insights helped me recognize my weaker points and where I needed to be more thorough with my analysis. My pilot survey helped me make a more effective final questionnaire. With the help of the responses from my pilot survey, I made a questionnaire consisting of mostly choice-based questions. From the beginning of my analysis, I realized the value of analyzing the raw data thoroughly. Students from higher income backgrounds were very straightforward and took no time at all answering questions in the questionnaire. This also helped me realize that the students from the lower income backgrounds really struggle to be able to convey their thoughts. It also proved to me that many from higher income backgrounds took for solution to the issues they face. Although this was a topic of passion for me, this project required 3 months to do properly. However, I managed in 1 month, and this led me to a lot of stress. In the future, I want to make sure that any project I do is more spread out. My learnings at the end of this project. I learned to give anything I do my best shot. I learned to briefly understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I learned to trust myself. And lastly, but most importantly, to push myself to my limits. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ganesh. I'm a 12th grader who homeschools in Chennai. Today, I will be talking about how apps impacted our lives during COVID. To begin this, I decided to analyze the problems that were faced. A major factor was that we could not move around outside our house like we could pre-pandemic. Everyone was stuck inside. This caused many businesses that required in-person interaction to shut down. But most importantly, people could not move around in search of time-critical care and supplies. This posed to be the biggest problem as it prevented many people from getting the care they need. However, this problem was quite overcome with the help of cyberspaces. To put it briefly, cyberspace is a widespread, interconnected digital information technology. It allows people to connect with each other from anywhere. It helped people overcome the various boundaries caused by COVID. For this project, I made a questionnaire to try and find the impact of cyberspaces during the lockdown period. I identified 4 categories of people whom I decided to interview. Beneficiaries. These are the people who benefited from using the apps. Then benefactors. These are the people who gave or referred supplies to beneficiaries. In between these two, we have intermediaries. These are the people who passed on information from the benefactor to the beneficiary and vice versa. However, it should be noted that an intermediary does not necessarily have to be a person. A benefactor can communicate with a beneficiary through an app, so the app will act as an intermediary. Finally, I interviewed a creator of a COVID app to understand what motivated them to do so and what processes were there during the development. In total, there were 23 respondents, 13 of whom were beneficiaries, 5 intermediaries, 4 benefactors, and 1 creator. Most of the beneficiaries used Arogya Setu, WhatsApp, and regular phone calls to fulfill their needs. 2 people used Doctolib and 1 person used Telegram. Now, 7 of them said they contracted COVID and or had cared for someone close to them who did. However, it was noticed that most people we interviewed did not have any time-critical needs. The only urgent need was to know how to deal with the virus and what are the precautions one has to take when they have contracted it. It was noticed that more than medical needs, 8 of them said they faced psychological challenges. Being stuck at home caused problems. Even when any of their close ones fell ill due to COVID or otherwise, they could only talk over the phone and could not meet in person. In 4 cases, the relatives and other members from their family passed away and they could not attend the funeral nor comfort other family members in person. This disturbed many people emotionally. The beneficiaries also faced other challenges. There was a lot of misinformation going around about COVID treatment and COVID itself. Unfortunately, the same cyberspaces were used to spread lies. During the second wave in India, it was found that many scammers sold fake supplies and medicines such as remdesivir to hospitals. There was also misinformation about how to register for vaccines. A respondent had also said that there were many bugs in the Doctolib app that caused problems. Now, we move on to the intermediaries. These are the people who connected beneficiaries to benefactors. The intermediaries mainly chose this job to help people such as COVID patients, migrant workers, and elderly people. They mainly use WhatsApp, regular voice call, and Arogya Setu. Most of these intermediaries set up a network using their old contacts and connections to help beneficiaries. However, they also face some challenges. The intermediary had to check if the beneficiary's request was genuine. This was necessary as there was a chance of getting scammed. It also proved to be quite a challenging task to overcome because there was no foolproof way in checking if the request was genuine. Two of the intermediaries also had trouble getting used to the apps. For the case of migrant workers, the intermediary had to be careful not to cause any problems with the employer and the worker, as many employers refuse to let their workers go back to their hometown. Now, we move on to the last part of the link, the benefactors. Similar to beneficiaries and intermediaries, the benefactors mostly communicated via WhatsApp, and one benefactor even used Facebook and Instagram. Most of the benefactors supplied or referred medical aid and financial aid. Some of the other resources are listed on the screen. Most of the benefactors communicated through an NGO and the intermediary to distribute resources. 3 of the benefactors worked on an individual basis while the remaining one represented an institution. They did also connect with certain people from remote areas using WhatsApps to inquire about provisions. I decided to survey a creator to understand the mindset behind making the app and how the app itself was developed. The creator who was contacted said they made an app for an NGO free of cost. I found that for the app he developed, a pre-existing source code was used. This shows that there were other relief apps that served similar purposes such as medication during an epidemic or supplies in any disaster. The app was available nationwide and had over 750 users. Here is an app person interface diagram to sum up. A beneficiary uses an app to connect with an intermediary. The double arrows indicate that the communication is two-way. The intermediary can in turn connect with benefactors using an app. The benefactors, regardless of being individual or part of an institution, get back to the intermediary with the supplies or information or referrals, if available, through an app. The beneficiary then uses the app to collect the supplies or get the appropriate information. Finally, the apps have a two-way arrow connected with the creator. A creator can make the app, provide the app to the users, and then make any changes to the app as suggested by the users. In conclusion, the real world, that is the physical world, was affected by COVID. Hence, there were temporary barriers that were put in place. A major drawback posed by these barriers was that we could not move around freely. In order to overcome this, creators developed apps that became part of the cyberspace. Here, there is no physical movement required and there is time-critical data transfer. With the appropriate technology from the real world, a data query can be sent to the cyberspace and a data response will be sent back. The data response will then be used in the real world to help people get the right care. Hence, the net result of this is the development of geographies of care in the real world using the tools of the cyberspace. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Priyanka Laik of Class 11 from St. Michael's School, Durgapur, West Bengal. And today we will be presenting our work on geographies of topophilia and topophobia during COVID-19 pandemic in Durgapur. This work is a joint venture by me and one of my classmates, Joypal, and we've also been assisted in this work by our geography teacher, Ms. Tamali Haldar. So when I talk about our presentation, the first question that comes to our mind is, what exactly is topophilia? The term topophilia was popularized by Weifutuan in his book Topophilia, a study of environmental perception, attitudes, and values, published in 1974. This topophilia is a familiar sentiment, a word that encapsulates the pleasantly varied relationships we have with particular bits of the world, both as individuals and as participants in cultures with long histories. And while this love of place is part of our affective ties to environments, these ties also include antipathies to places like apprehension, dislike, revulsion, or even fear of places. And that's exactly when we come across another term called topophobia, which literally means fear or dislike of place. In our presentation, we decided to work on the emotions felt by the people, particularly during the lockdown, because as we all know, people spend most of the time at home during this period, and that's why we deemed it necessary to work on geographies of care at home, because it made most of us anxious, panicky, and even possibly made us think, say, or do things that we might not consider appropriate under normal circumstances. So researching about the geographies of topophilia and topophobia during COVID-19 pandemic in Durgapur thus offers an analytical reflection on the human habitat of people in Durgapur during the time of pandemic. If I have to talk about our aims and objectives, we can say that we have tried to study the nature of life during lockdown, that is, the emotions felt, the boredom, how individuals cared for one another, the activities performed, and the various crises faced by the people of Durgapur. And for this, we made a structured questionnaire through Google Form and shared it across various social media platforms to reach as many people as possible in Durgapur. And we adopted the snowball sampling method for this, which is a part of a non-probability sampling technique where the sharing of the Google Form was limited within our social network. We asked numerous questions to our respondents to know and study about the nature of life during lockdown, and these are some of the questions that were specifically asked to our respondents to capture their perspective about care at home. Next, I'll move over to the explanation of the study area. Now, Durgapur is basically known for its steel plants, as it has one of India's top steel plants called Durgapur Steel Plant. This municipal corporation has been taken into account for our work, where, as you can see, it's divided into 43 wards. And as per reports released by Census India 2011, the Durgapur Municipal Corporation has a total population of 5,66,517. The next part of the presentation will be taken up by my friend, Joya Paul.
Good morning, everyone. This is Joya Paul of class 11, and I shall continue with the next part of the analysis. So as we can see, nearly 66.4% of our respondents live in owned houses in Durgapur. This is really proved of great help, as they have stated, especially during this pandemic period. This is because they could spend the payable rent amount in their own personal and healthcare facilities. On the other hand, people who live in rented houses could look after their neighbors more. Now, most of our respondents were students, and among those students, nearly 76% of them have watched movies in television and laptop to take care of themselves during the lockdown period. Now I'm going on a topic which has been already introduced by my classmate Priyanka Lai. As we can see that before the COVID had hit us, most people, like 72.4% of them, used to perceive their room as an area of relaxation, which shows the sign of topophilia amongst them before the pandemic, which gradually turned to topophobia as the COVID-19 pandemic started, and they started perceiving their room as an area which is devoid of privacy. The map that we can see on the screen shows a comparative study. On the left-hand side, we can see that the people of Durgapur, before the COVID-19 pandemic had started, used to perceive their room as an area of privacy, which is topophilia amongst them, which gradually converted to topophobia as the pandemic started in March 2020. Now, we can see that like many of them could also perceive their room as an area of relaxation as well, even after the COVID-19 started. This is because the rush of going to schools and colleges as well as job sectors was not there, and they could sit comfortably back in their home to attend the classes and do their jobs. However, the number of people who perceive this room as an area of loneliness are more, because they were like restricted within the four walls of their room. So that's the result. Most of our respondents have 4 family members and 2 dwelling rooms, which has definitely created privacy encroachment issues during the lockdown period. More importantly, if one family member had tested COVID positive, then the other members had to face real difficulties. This is because they had to stay in one room, and also maintaining proper distance from the patient was really difficult. Now, as we know that every single thing in this world has pros and cons, so did the lockdown period, as stated by our 134 respondents. While many bonded well with their family members and spent quality time with them, many who were from outside got stuck in Durgapur due to the stopping of transport systems and could not return to their family and near and dear ones. And thus the feeling of loneliness cropped up amongst them. That's all for my part. Next, my geography teacher, Ms. Tomali Haldar, will take over. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Tomali Haldar, geography teacher of St. Michael's School, Durgapur. And now I would like to continue with the rest part of the presentation. Over here, a map has been displayed which shows the presence of the steady internet connection in different corners of Durgapur 2020. It was very imperative to ask from the respondents that what precautionary steps did they take at their home, and did they get any steady network connection at their home. It was seen that most of the respondents from the ward number 22 told that they had steady internet connection at their place, and as one moves away from the central portion of the area, the people residing in the outlier part of the city or the peripheral parts of the city, they told that most of them had very bleak internet connection. Now, steady internet connection is an indicative of the fact that the precautionary steps that are needed to be taken care of oneself during the COVID-19 pandemic in Durgapur must have been more strong towards the central portion of the city, and as one moves from the central portion of the city towards the peripheral regions over there, that since the network connection is bleak, it is indicative of the fact that people might not have got proper information regarding the precautionary steps to be taken during the COVID-19 pandemic in Durgapur. To conclude our research work, it can be said that if one moves from before a COVID situation to during a COVID situation, it is seen that before the COVID situation, people could actually feel a sense of belongingness to their place in which they or he or she was residing. But as one moved into the era of the COVID-19 pandemic, the suffocation, the stress, the problems or the fear related with the place increased, and which can be associated with that of topophobia. Everything has its own good effects and the bad effects. The good effect of the lockdown period was that since most of the respondents told that they could bond more with their family members because they could get time, which earlier was not possible since they were locked within the premises of their household. They had to talk with their family members only, mostly with their family members, and it increased their bonding. Whereas the ill effect of the biggest ill effect of the lockdown period was that it reduced the communication skills of the respondents. When they actually had a face-to-face interaction, they could not interact properly. So that was the biggest ill effect of the lockdown period. It can also be seen that the people who were residing in the rented homes, they were able to take care more of the neighbors as opposed to the people residing in their own homes. Also, it can be seen that the people residing in their own homes could save more, and that saved money could be used behind their care at home, which was not possible in the case of the people residing in the rented homes because they had to pay the rent while they were staying at the rented homes. And it can also be said that the central portion of the city displayed the highest amount of the steady internet connection, which is indicative of the fact that the people must have got the information on time about the precautionary steps to be taken during the COVID-19 pandemic. The major limitations of our research work was that since we have gathered the data with the help of the snowball sampling, so it was not possible to reach everyone, and the sharing of the Google form was limited within our social networks. It was not beyond our social networks. So it can be said that since we couldn't reach the entire population, and the entire population of the Durgapur is more than 5 lakh, and the amount of respondents that we got was only 134. So the analysis that we have doesn't give a general overview of the Durgapur, but it does give some overview about the care at home in different corners of Durgapur. So that's what we would like to end the presentation over here. We hope you like it. Thank you very much.
Adaptation in the time of COVID-19.
COVID, the new normal.
I am Nathan Samuel.
And I'm Leah Dano. As the Austrian neurologist and philosopher Viktor Frankl once said, when we're no longer able to change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves and adapt to the situation. We've seen our ability to adapt play out during the pandemic like we've never seen before. As human beings, we have certain universal needs, which include physiological needs, safety needs, social needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization. The pandemic posed a direct threat to us and compromised all these needs to various degrees. Though we initially felt threatened and anxious, with time we learned to cope and adapt. We were curious to understand how we've changed during the pandemic.
Here we try to explore how COVID-19 changed us in terms of geography of our living arrangements, the relationships in our community, and our self-care habits. We took a survey on how COVID-19 has changed us, and we got a wide variety of interesting responses. Our study population includes the 15 adolescent students of our school aged between 12 to 14, 7 teachers and their families. Out of the 22 participants, 6 were male and 16 were female.
Our school is located in Hennur, which comes under North Bangalore. Most of the participants lived in and around the area, and 3 lived in East Bangalore. Out of the 22 people in our study, 13 lived in apartment complexes and 9 lived in independent houses. During the pandemic, some families shifted residence within the city so that the whole family could live together. A few made an urban to rural shift to live with their grandparents and to have more open space. The home setup changed in most families to accommodate everyone's needs and create space for work and study. Since all of us attended office and school online, we faced many internet and device problems. To solve our problems, we got new devices to use since the devices we had didn't meet the requirements. So, some of us even donated the unutilized devices we had. All of us had to upgrade our Wi-Fi connection too.
While we found it convenient to have all our resources at our fingertips with online communication, we missed physical interaction. We made up for it by having group study times and games time after school hours. Even though it proved difficult at first, we learned to adjust to this new way of communication. Family interactions. We had an increased number of conflicts, but more quality family time.
We looked at the changes in self-care habits in terms of physical activity, dietary habits, and sleep patterns.
Out of the 22 participants, 12 reported an increase in their physical activities, 6 said that they had become more sedentary, and 4 said that there were no changes. In the first wave, the increase in physical activity was mainly due to doing all the household chores. By the time of the second wave, people also incorporated a more regular exercise routine in order to stay healthy. The most popular routine for adults was yoga, and for the children it was running and cycling. Most of the participants who said that they had become less active during the pandemic were students.
During the first wave, We had only home cooked meals, which was much healthier, and we were also conscious about keeping our immunity up. But by the time the second wave hit, we were craving for a wider variety of foods, and we began to return to our old habits. We ordered in more, and we were also snacking more often. During the pandemic, many of us picked up new skills of cooking and vegetable gardening.
Coming to the sleep pattern, we found a difference between the responses of the teacher and the students. Most of the teachers didn't see any change in their sleeping pattern. Only one teacher reported that she slept later, lesser and more irregularly. During the pandemic, most of the students reported that they slept and woke up later, slept for longer hours and more irregularly during the pandemic.
Out of the 22 participants, we found that 18 had either contracted COVID or knew someone in their immediate circle of family and friends who had it.
We learned from the survey that the people healthy affected families in various ways, such as doing their chores, providing their essentials, taking care of the people who are tested negative, volunteering in organizations who healthy affected, and keeping up their spirits.
Though we faced many problems due to the pandemic, we also experienced several positive changes. We learned to embrace technology, pursued new hobbies, and got more time to explore new skills. We also spent more time with family and had more time for self-reflection. Are we taking part in history right now? What difficulties will we face in getting back to the way it was before? Will we ever be the same again, even when things are back to normal? Is this the new normal?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There we are. Thank you all for the presentations. We now go to the Q&A part of the session. What we'll do is we'll have the TIGS response first, and then I'll open it up to anyone else. Just want you to know, please, that we may not be able to accommodate everyone's comments and questions, but you can still provide that feedback on YouTube when we finally get the videos up there. To make a comment or to participate in the Q&A, please press the raise hand button so that we can identify who wishes to speak. And as I said, it's going to be random. So if you miss out, please don't be upset. You can still raise those questions and presenters will be encouraged to answer those questions online on YouTube when the videos are posted there. Okay. With that said, I would like to invite Dr. Mutata to provide a brief response to the session so far.
Everyone can turn their videos on as well.
Yeah, everyone, please feel free to turn your videos on.
For some reason, I'm just completely red.
No idea. Okay, Dr. Mutata, please go ahead.
I would like to request all the presenters also to turn on their videos and
Okay, thanks to all the presenters in this session, which mostly focused on children, schooling, and technology. And we got to understand a lot about the context of children and their experiences. What I would like to suggest, Chandra, is because we have many participants from the US and they're also sort of moving closer to bedtime or maybe past bedtime for some. Perhaps we can invite some comments from our friends of TIGS from the US for
Surely,
this.
surely, good idea. So would any of you like to ask any questions, make any comments to the presentations that we've just had.
And also, please make a note of the name of the student to whom you wish to address your question or comment.
Heidi, would you like to make any comments or ask questions?
No, for some reason, my whole screen turned red.
We can hear you, so please go ahead.
No, I didn't have a question. I'm sorry, I was making.
Oh, I can see you now. We can see you now.
Yeah.
All right. How about Sue? Sue, do you have any comments or questions you would like to raise? Okay, I don't know if Sue's still around online.
Did you ask her to unmute?
Okay, I don't see Sue here. Is Randy, are you still there?
Yeah, she's still there, but I don't know, she couldn't able to unmute.
Yeah, okay. Because I can't see Randy or Sue on my list of participants. Oh, there's Randy.
Yeah, hi.
Randy, do you
Yes,
have
I'm
any
here.
comments, questions you would like to add?
I don't really have any questions. I just feel like I learned a lot about what the students had gone through and what their teachers had gone through, their families. It was really kind of filled out the picture for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue, are you there? Okay, I don't know if Susan is around. Okay, Dr. Mutata says you would like to add some comments. Please go ahead.
Okay. My first question is to the first presenters, Sai Vamsi et al. So can you, I really enjoyed your presentation. So what I wanted to ask you is, can you think about how to present your data visually in order to see the patterns in your responses? What you had done was you had typed out the text and told us how many respondents said yes or no, or you explained the patterns like that. Did you explore other ways of sharing your data? Did you look at other visual methods?
Yes, we looked at other visual methods, but it was very long. We had very less time. We had our exams coming up, so we had done it directly.
I see. Okay. This was an issue that a lot of children faced. Their exams came up at the same time when they were working on their presentations. So in spite of which they have delivered whatever they have delivered so far. Thanks for clarifying that, Sai Vamsi. Any other questions, Mutata?
Yeah, I have a question for Kanishk.
Yes.
So Kanishk, thanks again for choosing that. It was a very unique topic and also gave us an insight into the potential and power of apps, because there's a lot of hype and talk about apps coming to the rescue. I think the strong part of your research is that it reveals both the potentials and the problems associated with cyberspace. So you asked every category of respondent, what the benefits were and also what the problems were. But I noticed that you didn't ask the creators about the limitations or the problems, just as you had asked all the other categories of respondents. So can you talk a little bit about that in your interviews? Did you touch upon that, or why did you choose not to touch upon it if you didn't? I'm just curious to hear about that.
Well, in my questionnaire, I had given those questions actually. Were there any limitations for in the app that was told by the users? Or what were the limitations you faced when developing the app? But I didn't make any of them compulsory and they were left unanswered. So, and so yeah. So, but I had given that option to, if they had any limitations they wanted to share, they could have shared, but yeah, they chose not to. So
while we're talking about Kanishk's presentation, if I may ask him another question. Kanishk, you told me offline separately that you had received more number of responses after you had finished the presentation. Can you shed some light on how many responses you have gotten from which of the categories of people you have surveyed and what you plan to do with those data?
Well, I haven't actually analyzed individually, but in total, I have around 80 respondents right now, and it's still, the questionnaire is still open. So I plan to have much more respondents as I take it forward.
Okay. And these responses that you have additionally received, are they from, what kind of geographical spread do they have? Are they all from within India or elsewhere as well?
Most are in India. I mean, a couple of my mom's friends, they stay abroad. So they had shared it with their contacts there, say Canada and US also.
Okay.
So,
okay.
But majority is from India.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Anybody else wants to ask a question? Please click on the raise hand.
Sunil has his hand raised.
May I go ahead?
Yes, please go ahead.
Kanishk, that was a great presentation and a very timely sort of research. I have one question to you. I know you live in Chennai, and unfortunately you are facing another emergency situation like the one we all did in 2020 with COVID. Do you foresee any extensions of the app approach for other emergencies that might crop up, like your current flooding, which then brings other problems like groceries and access to medical help, etc.?
Yes, I do actually see apps helping in those things also, because the creator who I surveyed, he said that he used a pre-existing source code, which means a similar app has already been developed and it's been modified to help us during COVID times. So I do foresee apps helping us in other disasters and epidemics in the future. So,
okay.
If I might ask a question for Siddharth Ashwin. It's a very thoughtful presentation that you made, and I really enjoyed listening to it also. I have one question for you. How did the geographic location affect the experiences of students in your population? How did it affect their experience of online classes? Do you have some thoughts on that?
Can you specify exactly what you mean by geographic
location? See, the students whom you survey had different kinds of experiences, correct? Right.
Yes.
Did their geographic location make a difference? Did it affect their experience in any way?
It could have, because some of them lived in quite the rural parts of Bangalore where you're not very connected with society as such. So some of them could have experienced something that's, like you mentioned, not very included.
And I think it will be really good for you to pursue this. As Dr. Mutata said, don't let this stop at this point. Continue your research. And do you remember also that Dr. Heidi talked about the variations that you get in the geography and demography? Location plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, it does.
So try and see if you can find what might have been some of the enabling factors in urban areas which were absent in rural areas, and how those might have affected COVID care geographies. Yeah, that would be something very good for you to pursue further. May I ask another question, or somebody's? Oh, two people have raised their hands. Please let me see who they are.
Parvati?
Yeah, Ms. Parvati, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Hello. I have a question about the first presentation by Sai Lohit and team. Firstly, brilliant presentation. And for me, the key takeaway there was about the procrastination that you mentioned, that two children couldn't procrastinate because now the parents were aware of the homework. And that was a brilliant catch. In that, I had a question that the four children mentioned that they were able to procrastinate. So is there a pattern you found there? How could they procrastinate? Because even they were taking it online. So that has been lingering in my mind. So I thought I will ask that question.
So can you state the question once more so that they can get a clearer idea?
Okay, the four children, they said they were able to procrastinate the homework or everything. But the two children who couldn't, they mentioned that because their parents were now aware of the work. So how were the other four children able to procrastinate? Is there a pattern there? Is what I mean? Did they mention how they were able to procrastinate, or I don't know if I'm clear now?
Yeah. Okay. Any of you can answer that? Please feel free. Anyone in the team can answer that.
Actually, not every parents check their homeworks and everything. For those two members, for those two students, they had checked it and they could find it out, while four of them are procrastinating more because no teachers were checking their homeworks.
Okay.
Okay. So it's same as before. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have a question from Ms. Sridevi. Please go ahead.
I think there were more people raising their hands before me, so maybe I should give them.
No, just go ahead. Don't worry about it.
Okay. So my question was to Jaya, Paul, and team, and this is connected to the next team also, the Anveshana team. There was a part where thank you first for the Topophilia and Topophobia. I learned something new today. That was very interesting. And what I wanted to ask was, there was this part of living together causing conflicts. And you had a part where you said they were more interested. There was a lot more bonding. But I was not sure if you had a question like that. It was specific about causing conflict, living together causing conflict, which the Anveshana team brought out. So if you don't have, maybe you could include it and look at it from that perspective also. Would you have a response to that? Did you already ask?
Good morning, everyone. This is Tomali Halda, geography teacher of St. Michael's School. I would request Joya Paul, one of my students, to answer your question, because that is the part that she has explained. So Joya, if you are there, kindly answer ma'am's question.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, can you please, ma'am, I request you to repeat the question once again, because I cannot hear you properly.
Sure. So you had a few slides where you said that the part when people live together in a family of four, and there were restrictions, even the lesser number of rooms, and if somebody had COVID, it was even more restrictive. So you spoke about that, but at some point it was the outcome was that they bonded better, but there was less privacy. But what is a conflict? Did living together itself cause conflicts? Because that is something that came out in the next presentation quite strongly. Yeah.
Ma'am, actually, we had a question like that was already in the presentation, that how did they feel during the COVID-19 situation? And most of them had replied that they had a feeling of loneliness, or they perceived their room as an area which was devoid of privacy. So we considered that people might have conflicts with their family members, or like which have encroached their privacy issues. So that was all, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Just one thing I wanted to point out to the next group, that there was a slide which said taking care of people who tested negative. I don't know if that was a typo or is something I missed. Just wanted to point that out to you, the Anveshana team. Maybe you can take a look at it and see what that was. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We have another person wishing to speak, Ms. Deepika Khandelwal. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. The presentations have been really very touching and insightful. I would ask Kanesh about that app. It's really appreciable that you have brought in the 3 categories. That is in case of beneficiaries, intermediaries, and benefactors. I mean, that really put it very beautifully categorized. And in particular case of intermediaries, I would like to ask you, the case of migrants, what was the most common network or the commonly used app by the intermediaries? Because they played a huge important role, I understand, intermediaries. So which was the most common app that they used? I mean, I don't know, I missed if you had already brought that out.
No, so the main mode of contact was WhatsApp.
Even for intermediaries?
Yes, intermediate.
Yeah, so, okay, so they were not the more organized people, you mean, or the intermediaries were the generally the most common public, or even they were NGOs which had taken that role?
They were actually common public. My mom was one of the person who helped with in the migrant worker case, who acted as an intermediary. So it was anyone who any volunteer. They just contacted. They were either reached out by an NGO or they just took it up on themselves, and they themselves became an intermediary. So
from your respondent list, bigger percentage were the individuals who came up and became the intermediaries, and not the organized NGOs.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. We have time for just 1 or 2 more questions. We'll go to Harshita. Harshita, please go ahead.
Hi. So my question was to Kanishk. So when you're covering the apps and the rescue for the people, and did you actually cover the people who didn't know how to use an app, who are very new to this technology in the pandemic period?
Harshita, I have to remind you that before you could ask the question, you have to say what one thing about the presentation that you liked.
Yeah, the presentation was actually, it was a very new topic. It was very interesting to know about it.
Cool. Kanish, please go ahead.
So your question was anyone new who weren't comfortable using the app, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were actually many people, even my mom, they couldn't use the app properly. And so they did contact others who were using the apps. Like I said, there were apps similar which were used before for relief supplies. So those people who worked before, they already knew how the app worked and etc. So they were contacted by people who didn't know how to use the app to get a hold of it.
Okay, cool. And we have the final question for this session from Mr. Guru Datta. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. And it was indeed a very insightful session. I got to see different themes of analysis in terms of how geography plays a key role when it comes to the pandemic like COVID. The initial 2 presentations, I should really appreciate the amount of research and thoughtfulness the students have put in to explore, the minutest things. From an adult perspective, we often overlook such things, but I was very delighted that you were able to dig it out. And what I saw is that internet is a big issue, and the internet has been an issue in all aspects, even a lot of office meetings and everywhere internet is still an issue. It's a good thing. And my key question is for the people who used a little bit of maps. There were some thematic maps, especially I think the presentation of which dealt about the topophilia of Durgapur. And later on, I think Nathan Samuel presentation also. You are showcasing some maps. I'm quite curious to know, how did you arrive at making the maps? What was the steps you took to do such maps? So maybe if you can just touch upon these things, it will be quite useful for maybe the earlier presenters, because in the earlier presentations, as Chandrasekhar sir was talking about, and Dr. Mutata was talking about, that visualization is an important aspect. Maybe if the later on presenters who made use of maps can just talk about it, it will be quite useful.
Very, very good question. Nathan, do you want to go first? Nathan or Leah, would either of you like to go first in answering that question?
Yeah, so your question was just about how we came up with the map, is it?
Correct. How did you choose those maps?
Yeah, so we were thinking that it would be a really nice way to actually just show in a visual sense of the places where each of our study population, where they lived. So we found that our school, it's in North Bangalore near Hennur, and we found that most of the people were near there. It was just a couple of them that were closer to the east. So we thought that it'll be really nice if we could actually point out each of them. I mean, where they lived, just an approximation of where they lived on the map. But unfortunately, we weren't able to do it to that accuracy. So we just stuck on just showing the school and then just saying where it was. We just found a map on Google, and then we were like, okay, so this one looks fine. It's better for visualization. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And would our team from Durgapur, St. Michael's School, would any of you like to address the question?
Yes, sir. I would like to answer the question on behalf of my team. So we thought that it would be better understandable if we could provide a visual insight on the research that we did. And for that, we used a map of Durgapur and put colors to indicate the feeling felt by the people. For example, if the majority of the people residing in ward number 22 of Durgapur felt that after the COVID-19 pandemic, they started perceiving their room as an area of relaxation, we actually put the color red to indicate that feeling felt by the people residing in that particular part of the city. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sure. Well, we have a final comment from Dr. Muttata. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just to sort of tie up this discussion on maps, I'd like to also congratulate Durgapur team for, it's nice to see teacher and student combination, and we would like to encourage more teams to do this, because in reinventing the discipline of geography, we really need all teachers to also come together and work with the students. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And also, what I'd like to say is it's nice that in the beginning of your study that you've asked questions to characterize the population, like what Professor Heidi talked about, like what are the demographics, the age, the gender, etc. All right, so you can say that those things have a bearing on the behavior of the people. But then finally, when you choose to represent your data, you show it in the form of, in the map, where you show everything ward-based, what area and what are the results. But then you can tell us a little bit more about each ward also, and link the demographics to the spatial aspect to the ward. And that will help you understand the reasons behind behaviors. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yes, ma'am. The only problem was that we intended to do that, but when we were making the final presentation, it was more than 15 or 20 minutes. So we had to actually reduce that. We had to be within the time frame as well. So we missed out a lot of important parts in our analysis. But we did really ponder on that. Thank you, ma'am, for bringing it out.
Sure.
And I would also like to point out that in the final session, I'll suggest some ways in which you can take this research forward and still present it to the world. With ticks. Yeah, I'll come to that in the final session.
Sure.
We are running a little bit behind schedule, as I had indicated might happen. It's now 10:13. We will resume at 10:20 a.m. That is 7 minutes from now. The break is slightly shorter than I had hoped, but we have to keep things moving. So it's essentially basically about 6 minutes left now for your break. So please stay logged in and come back in 6 minutes, and we'll continue with our second session. See you also.
Thank you all. I have to leave because it's late here. I'm 11 and a half hours after you. So thank you so much. It was just fabulous, and I look forward to watching your videos. Bye.
Bye. See you.
Good